Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Nairobi Health Show with Claudia Wilson. Claudia, thanks so much for being a repeat offender on the Nairobi Health Show. You had the courage to come back.
Oh, of course. I love this. It was really fun. So I'm always up for more fun.
It was fun the first time, and I've got a project that I really wanted to share online. And when I thought about who I could have as a guest to do this, you were the person that came, to the top of my mind for this project, because I think it's so important. And you've already spent countless hours diving into this very topic of developing out meals for people that they can eat that meet a criteria that both you and I agree on.
Yeah.
And that we're trying to teach people to do. But to be honest, with so many people, it's kind of the hardest thing. As a health coach, it's easy to teach principles. Like, here's why you need to do this. And here's even how to do this. Yeah. And at the end of the day, if they wander in their kitchen and can't put together a healthy, tasty meal, it all falls apart.
Yep.
And so today we're going to help people do that.
Yeah, we are. We're going to give you concrete examples that you can use today.
I call it 9 perfect meals. And I got it kind of from the book, The 4-Hour Body, is where I first was introduced to this concept. Have you read 4-Hour Body by chance by Tim Ferriss?
I haven't, but I need
to. It's a good one. And one of the things he teaches is that we make things too complex.
Well, that's what I teach. It doesn't have to be that hard.
Right. And of course, we respect variety. We all want variety in our diet, and variety is important. But there is a point of diminishing returns where we have so much variety. But at the same time, if we look at the actual how many meals we ate in the last week that were really meeting our criteria and really fully healthy with the right mix of healthy carbs and fats and protein and all the phytonutrients that we need, if we put together a list of really core meals that we really love and are very nutritious and that are very easy to make in most cases, and that we always have the ingredients for,
yes,
those 9 meals is lots of variety. And now we're always ready to make a great tasting meal that we really love when we go in the kitchen.
Yeah, exactly.
And the reason I asked Claudia, for those of you watching the show, to come back is because she, like I said, has not only spent the hours, she's written a book. Let's see the book.
Oh, have a book right here.
The 1-2 punch.
There we go.
Can you flip through it just a little bit? Show us a little bit of the inside. Just kind of give us
I've got some markers. Let's see. I'm doing this backwards. I'm trying to show you the color. This is not going well.
It's going fine. People can see. I mean, there's lots of visuals and examples of great food ideas and meals.
The protein of carbs and protein. That's what we're going to be talking about.
Great mixes of carbs and protein right there.
Lots of personal stories. Oh, here's a meal plan. Look at that.
Yeah. And the book is great. I've got a copy of the book. I highly recommend the book. And it could be a great guide for those of you listening to this. But regardless, we want to help you today in this episode to be able to take a pen and a piece of paper if you're old school, or your app if you're a little newer school, whatever works for you, to just write down and capture some of the foods you really enjoy, and be able to put together the building blocks for some perfect meals that, as I mentioned, you can buy the ingredients for when you shop. Make sure that you always have the ingredients on hand so that you no longer wander into the kitchen with all this knowledge in your head, but the impulse to eat something that you really shouldn't eat because you just kind of didn't have a plan. You just weren't ready to go in the kitchen.
Exactly.
And make something healthy.
Dave and I know this stuff, and we have to have a plan. Like, I had to have a plan today of what I was going to have for breakfast, and I have a plan of what I'm going to do for lunch. To be honest, I don't have a plan for dinner, but I'm going to have to come up with one. So even providers that know this stuff, but I do have stuff available in my pantry and in my fridge. So even though we coach this all the time, you still have to have some kind of a plan.
Yeah, and before we jump in any further, could you give everyone your bio and background and what
Yes.
brought you to this point of being a health coach?
Yes, I'm happy to. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist and a board certified specialist in sports nutrition. I'm also a certified strength and conditioning specialist through the NSCA. And so, bottom line is, I'm a health coach. And my philosophy, and Dave and I have talked about this, my philosophy is it doesn't have to be that hard. So, I wrote the book from a very scientific perspective, but you wouldn't know it. It's like having a conversation with me, and all the references are at the back. It's very simple. You can read it in 2 hours. You can listen to it in 2 hours, and it's just, when is the optimal time to eat? What should I eat? And how do I keep going and dealing with all the emotions that come with it? I wanted lots of people that I've talked to, providers that I've talked to, even though they know this stuff, they use the book as a reference. And my clients use the book as a reference. And Dave, you've even recommended it to your clients to use as a reference book.
It really is a great reference book. And that's important because there's plenty of more philosophical books. There's tons of health books, and I've read tons myself, and I enjoy them. I always get something great, and I always encourage people to read and educate themselves more and more on health. And yet, it's kind of like the difference between having a map and having a compass. You know, it's wonderful to have a compass. If you're lost, you know exactly what direction things are anyway. So if you gotta head west, you follow the compass. And the compass and map analogy used in business or personal life is a wonderful analogy. But sometimes it's easier just to know where the trail is and follow it.
Exactly.
And that's what we're trying to accomplish today is help people to figure out 9 perfect meals, just 3 breakfast meals that you really enjoy that meet a good, healthy health criteria and mix of foods. That by the end of the day, if we've eaten one of the chosen breakfasts and one of the chosen lunches and one of the chosen dinners, we've gotten all the phytonutrients, we've gotten healthy carbs, fats, and protein, and we're generally feeling good, looking good, keeping our inflammation low, keeping our energy up, all those great things that happen when you get this stuff right.
Yep. So we're going to go through a bunch of items for breakfast and a bunch of items for lunch and a bunch of items for dinner. And what you as listeners and watchers are going to do is write down what sounds good to you. So that even though we're going to give you more than 3 ideas, you're going to write down or text or whatever, think of the ones 3 that sound good to you.
And then as we go, and one of the challenges with putting together meal plans is that everyone has different tastes, or someone with an allergy in the family, and so on. So if you understand the basics of what Claudia is talking about, and if you can just substitute a carb for the one that she said, maybe you don't want a potato, maybe you want rice. Well, no big deal. You just interchange the right part.
Exactly. So, and that's what I talk about in the 1-2 punch. I want you to think of at each meal, a fist-sized portion of protein and a fist-sized portion of carb, and then add some fat for satiety. And we're going to talk about fiber too. So you get the fiber from vegetables, you get vitamins from vegetables, you get phytonutrients from vegetables, but the fiber will really go a long way to keeping you full and keeping you regular. Everybody feels better when they're regular. And then the fat goes a long way to increasing your satiety and helping you feel good.
Okay, well, let's start with breakfast.
Yeah.
Why don't we start with your favorite breakfast? How about that? What is your favorite breakfast, Claudia?
Okay, my very favorite is an apple and peanut butter. And Dave is going to talk to you about adding vegetables at each meal, including breakfast. And he's got some ideas about that. Adding vegetables at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Here is my take on the apple and peanut butter. So I count nuts and nut butters as a protein and not a fat. And that is a lot of peanut butter. It's a lot of peanut butter, I know, with an apple, with the slices. But think about how full that is going to keep me, because I still believe that, and you'll read this in the book, that the optimal time to eat is when you're hungry. So it's okay that I have that much peanut butter because it's just going to last me longer than if I had a different combination of a protein and carb. So my answer to fiber and vegetables with the apple and peanut butter is I take a slice of apple, dip it in the peanut butter, and then I dip it in chia seeds. So there I'm getting a little more protein and lots of fiber and phytonutrients and vitamins and minerals without adding vegetables to my apple and peanut butter. So try it with the chia seeds. Yummy. That's my favorite.
And what kind of peanut butter do you use?
I use natural. It's just peanuts with a little bit of salt.
Yeah, me too. And for those of you listening, be careful about your source of peanut butter. Did you know that peanut butter can be up to 20% sugar? And they don't do that for flavor. I used to think that the reason peanut butter was sweetened was to get kids to like it more. The fact is it's not. Peanuts cost about $4 a pound and sugar costs $1 a pound. So when they can add sugar as a bulking agent to peanut butter, it lowers the expense, makes it sweeter. But 20%, think about it, you guys. If your jar of peanut butter is this big and this much of it is sugar, that's just gross. And that's what you're getting with a non-natural peanut butter. So make it a natural peanut butter. And by the way, Amy, it's fruits and veggies in my world, right? So that a large apple is probably like a serving and a half, depending on the size of your apple. Yeah. That's wonderful. You're getting a fruit. And also an apple's low in the glycemic index. There's just so many good things about an apple with the peanut butter.
Yeah.
Okay, what's number two? Number two option for breakfast.
Okay, number two is your protein is Greek yogurt. So plain Greek yogurt, and then you have the option of either doing the carb as granola or the carb as fruit or a little bit of both. So lower the amount of granola, lower the amount of fruit to make it like 1/5 size. So half granola, half fruit, or use one or the other. And then again, because I'm not actually adding veggies to this one, but I have added the fruit, you could add chia seeds for the fiber. And like I talked about, the vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients. That's my second. And you can make it ahead. You can make parfaits for the whole week. If that's easy.
So how would we make a parfait? What's all the ingredients of your parfait?
Same ingredients that I talked about. You can start with Greek yogurt as your base, and then the fruit, and then Greek yogurt, and then granola, and then Greek yogurt. Just keep layering it, and it's all done. So whether you use the granola or you use the fruit, you just layer it and keep it in the fridge. So it's already done.
Wonderful. One thing I would throw in right here is a natural for me, and what Claudia just described would be to put some berries. And berries is one of the healthiest, fruits, I guess. Berries are fruit, right? But it's one of the healthiest things that we can take in. The antioxidant value is very high. The phytonutrient value is very high. And in a parfait with Greek yogurt, they'd be absolutely delicious. So berries is one of the things that's a staple in our house and included. And it's one of the easy ways to get fruits and vegetables with breakfast. So go for organic if you can afford it. Luckily, the difference between organic and non-organic in price has really come down the last few years.
It really has.
And organic berries are far superior. I'm not a huge fan of getting everything organic because some things just don't need to be bought organic. But berries are one of those with a soft, thin skin, and they absorb those pollutants and pesticides that are used in industrial farming. So there's my plug on berries in a parfait. Okay. Breakfast number 3.
Okay, an omelet. I know you're going to talk about eggs, but an omelet or a tofu scramble. So one of the things that Dave challenged me with when I came up with my meals was to offer vegan and vegetarian options. So the first one I mentioned, completely vegan, the apple and peanut butter and the chia seeds. The second one I mentioned, vegetarian. The omelet can be made with eggs, or you could make a tofu scramble. but you're putting spinach and peppers and tomatoes and loading it up with veggies. And then your fat would be avocado on top of it.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah, that's
I'm all in.
And omelet, and it takes a little bit more time. My time saving tip is to, and Dave, you might be talking about this, meal planning. I meal prepping on the weekend. If I'm going to use roasted vegetables throughout the week, I make a couple pans, large pans of roasted vegetables. I keep them in the fridge. And if I was going to throw those vegetables in an omelet, then they're already done. They're already cooked. Eggs take that long to cook. And then I just throw in the roasted vegetables that I've been keeping in the fridge from the weekend.
Yeah, by the way, welcome Amy. Amy is one of our transformation participants at the moment, and glad to have her here. She's excited about these ideas. Amy, if you have any questions, let me know as you go. And let's see, it sounds like you already answered one of the questions from Claire. What does a fist-sized amount of protein look like for vegans, vegetarians? Why don't you dive into that a little bit more? That's a really great question. What does a fist-sized amount of protein look like for vegans and vegetarians?
It's the same as it is for people who eat meat. So it's a fist-sized portion of tofu. It's a fist-sized portion of edamame. It's a fist-sized portion of a meat alternative like Beyond Meat or Impossible Burger. It's a fist-sized portion of nuts. It's a handful of nuts, a fist-sized portion of nut butters. And I know how that sounds. I address it in the book. I know that sounds like so much, but if you're following your hunger signals, that's going to keep you full longer. So that's what that looks like. Great question, Claire. That's what that looks like for vegans. And in the book, I have a meal plan for meat eaters, fish eaters, chicken eaters, and a meal plan for vegans.
Okay, and let's go back to the chia seeds. Amy says, what is the serving size for chia seeds to count it for the fiber and nutrients? So how much chia are we trying to get here?
It's about 3 tablespoons. So a little less than a fourth a cup. And I don't measure, and I don't ask my clients to measure. We're trying to decrease the stress in life. I talk all about that in the book, but I feel like I'm getting about that when I have dipped each slice. I cut the apple into 8 slices. When I dip each slice into peanut butter and dip it into chia seeds, by the time I'm finished, I get about that, if not more.
Wonderful. I want to add something about the omelet. There are 2 superfoods. Convinced people would be better off if they could add more of them into their diet. And I might get some pushback here, and it just bounces right off you guys. I get it. But if you can work onions and fresh garlic into your omelet, those foods are very powerful, and they have a lot of unique characteristics. Garlic for helping keep you healthy and avoid illness. Same with onions. They both have very powerful properties, and they're delicious in an omelet. Now, I get it if you just don't want the bad breath or whatever, but if you can work those 2 foods into an, and then peppers. Maybe don't have quite the phytonutrient punch of the first 2, but they're delicious in an omelet. Any other comments on what veggies you put in an omelet, Claudia?
Well, I would do peppers. I love to do spinach because if you're using spinach, and you're going to talk about smoothies, if you're using fresh spinach, you can get a lot of spinach into a smoothie. But once it cooks down, you can get even more spinach into an omelet. So, and then you're getting your dark leafy greens. So I would say spinach, peppers, onions, garlic. If you're really struggling with the breath, I have an idea. You can contact me individually.
Ooh.
Because I can't remember what the product's called, but it works amazing. They're little parsley pills that you can take for your breath.
Interesting. Okay, if you remember that before done, let us know. Okay. Any more breakfast ideas?
Oh, yes. One more. We were talking about this before we went live. A lot of people just use cereal in the morning. And Dave and I used to recommend that if you were having cereal with any kind of milk, to get the protein balance, the protein anchor, and the protein foundation, we recommended that you mixed in some protein powder. Well, now there are a lot of cereals that are high in protein that you can purchase as is that are already high in protein. So if a cereal is best for you and easiest for you, then I would recommend a high protein cereal. And usually the high protein cereals are also very helpfully made. Some of them are made organically and naturally. They're also really high in fiber. So I buy a high protein granola, also high in fiber, and I buy a high protein Kashi cereal. Kashi has a lot of different brands that are high in protein. And then I add a milk that's high in protein. And so I'm really getting a good foundational protein, even though I'm having cereal and milk, because a traditional sugar cereal, I mean, might take 3 bowls to fill you up.
Yeah, which just sounds gross.
And
but
no
I'm
fiber.
going to tell you, I'll tell you a fun idea about cereal. My daughter, and we have, she has 3 children, so we have 3 grandchildren through her, and we got this guilty mom feeling a couple years ago that she was just giving her kids too much cereal. And she talked to her husband about it. She's like, I want to feed the kids a better breakfast. And what they decided to do, because they also knew kids would really miss the cereal and kids love cereal, so they started Cereal Saturday. And on Cereal Saturday is the only day of the week they have cereal, but they have sugar cereal, they have yummy cereal, whatever cereal the kids want is on Cereal Saturday. And 6 days a week, those kids get a healthy breakfast. And I really like that idea. We're going to stay with them in a few weeks, and I will enjoy Cereal Saturday along with them. But just knowing.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad. We all feel better about Dave since he said that.
I'm a 90%er. I'm not 100%er.
Okay.
I'm a 90%er. When I eat 90%, according to my own rules, I feel perfectly fine. And I can live at my ideal body weight and have good health and feel terrific. And so I actually am kind of averse to 100% thinking. I like the 90% rule.
Okay, good. I talk about 80-20 in the book for those of you that, are trying to get to Dave's standards, but not quite there.
Well, hey, look, according to Dr. Berardi of Precision Nutrition, which is where I got my certification, he believes that if people went to 60% of precision nutrition, that the whole country would have a revolution in increased health. And so listen, if 80% sounds too high, look, shoot for 60 or 70. The fact is a lot of Americans are kind of at 30, right? Yeah. In overall diet. So, but let's keep on solving that problem. Should we move to lunch?
Yeah. Do you want to do your breakfast first, or do you want me to dive into lunch? You do your breakfast first. Okay,
great. I will dive into my breakfast. And first of all, we have a comment, yay for leaving room for humanity, with a smiley face. So that's resonating. Yeah. My favorite breakfast, and the one I had this morning and the one I have probably 4 times a week, is old-fashioned oatmeal with berries, protein powder, and cinnamon. And I love it. And like, as I mentioned, I do organic berries because I just don't want the pesticides. And it's absolutely delicious. I never get sick of it. I've had this for breakfast for a very long time. It's always delicious. Sometimes I'm telling you, I'm in the middle of my workout thinking, when I'm done, I'm having oatmeal.
For my breakfast.
So, yeah. And so for some of you, that may not be the thing that you get all excited about. I realize oatmeal might sound quite mundane. But again, that's the whole point, though. If that sounds mundane to you, you pick something else. The idea is that all these ideas should resonate with you. Another one that I love.
Never choke down something you don't like.
Yeah. These 9 meals, the rule is, choose delicious. We're going for delicious. Yeah. The next one that I have, and I've talked about 3, I only have 2. The other is just what you mentioned. It's eggs, but I do have toast with it. Now, I love Dave's Killer Bread. That's a staple in our house.
Mm-hmm. Mine too.
Those of you that are intolerant, obviously that won't work. But I don't know if you guys realize this. When you toast bread, it breaks down the gluten. So if you just a little bit gluten intolerant, toasting the bread makes a huge difference. So either an omelet with toast, and I put butter on the toast, real butter, not margarine. And I also put either or guacamole on eggs, or I make them as an omelet. Either way, it gets vegetables worked into the mix. And so for me, eggs either sunny side up or as an omelet with a side of toast is delicious. I often will do that, especially after I usually do 2 pretty hard workouts in a week. I try to exercise 7 days a week. Only 2 of those are hard. The rest are easy or medium. And for some reason, after a really hard workout, I really prefer the eggs and toast breakfast.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is.
Something savory. I'm the same. I want protein, fat, and salt after a hard workout.
Yeah. Yeah. And those are my 2. Oh, and good point about the salt. I'm a biohacker. I'm constantly getting tests done, and I am almost chronically deficient in sodium. I have to, if I don't work on it, I'm going to be low in sodium. And so I try to add salt to a lot of things. As a matter of fact, I also don't have my first meal till either 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning most days. And so first thing in the morning, I often put a teaspoon of salt in with some BCAAs, creatine powder, and an electrolyte mix. And that's how I kind of give myself those elements before I eat my first meal. So that's not really a meal, what I just described, but that's something to do to support the fasting, because you get low on sodium when you're fasting. So anyways, that's my 2. I don't have 3. I just have 2. And that's what I eat every day.
When we were talking before, we both talked about a smoothie.
Yes.
So that's easy for a lot of people. And so you could always make a smoothie in the morning, and then you chuck everything into it. You can either do a Greek yogurt as your protein, or a protein powder, and then fruit and spinach, and then a liquid of your choice. So like a milk, either cow milk or soy milk or cashew milk. Good grief, there's a million milks, but a smoothie is always an option too. That's fast and easy.
Yeah, and that was actually my go-to breakfast for probably 5 years back when I was seriously into triathlon. And for one reason, because I could come home, I spent like a couple hours training in the morning, and I could come home and just throw all that stuff in the blender, mix it up, and start eating right away. So there's a huge convenience factor to a green smoothie. Not only that, you can get 5 to 9 servings of fruits and vegetables in one smoothie.
Exactly.
Between an apple, chia seeds.
Maybe I couldn't get 5 to 9. Maybe I could get 3, because I don't know that I could drink that much. But
actually,
maybe
5 to 9 is probably too many. Well, let's move on to lunch. What have you got for lunch ideas for us?
Okay, so my lunch and dinner ideas are the same because it's a similar type of meal. In the book, I talk about, and for you vegans out there, I talk about using legumes as a protein and a carb. Over the years, I've had lots of vegetarians and vegans come to me using legumes, kidney beans, garbanzo beans, refried beans, lentils, things like that, using them as a protein and solely a protein, and then adding carbs to that. And I found that their carbs were out of balance, particularly if they wanted to lose weight. So I treat legumes as a hybrid, because they have already carbohydrate and protein. So hummus is a great option of already ready and really quick, really easy. I make sure I have cut vegetables ready. I make sure I have hummus on hand. And then I'm getting protein, I'm getting carbohydrate, I'm getting fiber, I'm getting some fat because of the way the hummus was made. And then adding even more phytonutrients, vitamin, minerals, and fiber by adding the vegetables. So that's my first one for dinner or lunch.
Okay, fantastic. Hey, we've got a question back to the smoothie. One of the challenges people have with smoothies is they don't feel full for as long.
Okay, I have an answer for you.
Do you have any suggestions on? Okay, let's hear it.
Yeah. So sometimes, and I don't know exactly how you're making your smoothie and why it's not lasting very long. Remember, Dave and I talked in the beginning about fat and how that increases your satiety and keeps you fuller longer, which is why when I have a fistful of peanut butter, I'm full for a very long time. So it might be that you're missing some fat in your smoothie. So you can add some nuts, add a nut butter, or add half of an avocado, and that should increase how full you stay.
Okay, wonderful. Let's move on to the next lunch idea.
Okay, so another protein and carb is lentils. So either some of us in cooler climates are just coming out of winter. So lentil soup, you've already got your protein and carbohydrate. It's already got onions, garlic, celery, carrots. Lentil soup, you've got your protein and carb, or a lentil salad. So you just make the lentils ahead of time, put all the veggies in there, and you're ready to go. That's my second lunch or dinner.
Love it.
Okay.
Delicious.
My third, I'm just going to keep going so that you guys can get through these.
You're on a roll.
Yeah, my third is making fried rice. And I have an idea for rice and for pasta, because sometimes we're just in too big of a hurry to even put a pot on the stove, put the water in, boil it. You have to wait until it's boiling, and then you got to put the pasta in, then you got to wait till the pasta's done, and then you got to drain it, And sometimes that's that step, even though it's only maybe 15 minutes, maybe 20, that step is too long. So I actually make my pasta ahead of time and I freeze it in portions. And it works great. I know chefs and cooks would probably tell you, don't freeze pasta. It's going to make it really mushy, but it really works out. And then all I have to do is get it out and microwave it and heat up my sauce, my bottled sauce. So for the fried, I do the same with rice. I make it ahead of time. I freeze it, and then it's very easy to put seasonings in and make a fried rice with either egg or tofu to be vegan. And then I'm having Chinese fried rice. So that's my third option. Again, with the rice, my fourth option is making a rice bowl. So freeze it ahead of time or have it in the fridge ahead of time. Your rice is already done, and add whatever protein you want. So maybe chicken, maybe it's salmon, maybe it's steak, and then you've already got the rice, and then use the veggies that I talked about that you have roasted over the weekend that are already in the fridge. That's so easy. I pull out my roasted veggies, I pull out my rice, and I pull out my protein. Done. Your rice bowl.
Let me talk to two things that you just said. First of all, we freeze something in our house that's kind of unusual. We freeze the big bag of spinach.
Oh, yeah.
That we get.
Super helpful.
Yes, because spinach tends to go bad so quickly. Yes. But for green smoothies, keeping the spinach in the freezer is awesome. Yeah. And it can last as long as. Yep. And along those lines, when you talked about lunch and dinner being kind of the same, I absolutely agree with that. In my world, 3 favorite breakfasts and kind of 6 other meals is the way to go.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, to keep life more simple. And the pre-made meal aspect is huge, especially you mentioned earlier roasted vegetables. Roasted vegetables are so good. And the thing is, if you're gonna do some, you might as well do a lot, right? Yes, by the time you pull them all out. Yeah.
And cook them all and cook them all. I think I'm mentioning roasted vegetables because I'm in a cool climate. And so I'm still coming out of winter. I do the same when I'm having a salad, but sometimes, and I ask clients and they say the same thing. When it's the dead of winter, if you're in a cold climate, salad doesn't sound really appealing and inviting. Right. But when it's summer, when it's hotter, I do the same thing with salad. I chop all my lettuce, I chop all the veggies and put it in bags and keep it in the fridge. It's far easier to just pull out my lettuce base, pull out my veggies, and then pull out my protein and carb.
Yeah, I do 2 large trays every time I do roasted vegetables.
Yeah.
I love pink onion on them. I love sweet potatoes. I like peppers. I love Brussels sprouts cut in half. One of the tricks I've learned is that brushing the oil. I use avocado oil because it has a higher flash point than
Huh?
olive oil. And one of the things that used to kind of drive me nuts was taking the basting brush and kind of brushing the oil on everything. I've seen people dump the oil, but you can get a lot of oil on vegetables in a hurry if you're not careful.
Yes.
And finally, I've discovered that taking a huge bowl and putting everything in there and just pouring the oil over and then stirring it up has been the best way to do it. I can get the oil everywhere and then spread that out over my 2 big cookie sheets and cook those roasted veggies. Another thing is, if you're like us and have a convection oven, you may have never used the convection oven part of it. And I've heard this from several people. They
Yeah.
buy a new house, they move in, there's a convection oven. They don't know how it works. They never use it. I got to tell you, for roasted vegetables, a convection oven is the bomb.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
A little bit quicker, about
2 sheets in
25%.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. And it cooks more evenly. And it has this caramelizing effect
Yes.
on the end roasted vegetable product that is so delicious. So if you have a convection oven, you got to try roasted vegetables with it.
Yes. Agreed. Okay, my fifth idea is wraps. So and again, you can get very whole grain, high fiber, gluten-free if you need to, wraps, and it's very easy to lay your protein down, either a protein, a meat alternative, or roasted turkey, roasted ham, something like that. And it's very easy to load it with vegetables before you wrap it up, before you roll it, before you wrap it. But wraps are something that is very easy to have on hand and make, and also something that you can make the night before ahead of time and have it kept in the fridge for when you need it.
Okay. And a lot of people love a wrap. And what a great idea, but one that I don't think a lot of people really take advantage of, right? It's one of those things that I think a lot of people think of a wrap when they're out at a restaurant. Oh, they have a wrap. I like wraps. I'll get a wrap.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when you're shopping, it's one of those items you could easily just not even think of getting the ingredients for.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the wrap idea. It's just, you guys all know this. I'm just reminding you that a wrap is a good idea.
Very good. So go ahead.
Just a good, quick and easy idea. That's all.
Yeah. I want to go back to a thought I had also about the rice. Now, cheap rice is often bleached to make it very white. It's not that healthy of a product. And interestingly, when we're shopping and we see a 5-pound bag of rice for $10 and right beside it a 5-pound bag of rice for $20, we might think, wow, that's expensive. That's twice as much for this natural bag of rice versus this other one. And it does seem expensive to pay twice as much. But the actual fact is that $20 for 5 pounds of food is really, really cheap.
Yeah.
And so I'd encourage you guys in some of these things that I understand many of us were on a budget. We can't afford to buy the most expensive of everything. But there's some things that we can buy the best of, and it really won't hurt our family budget. For example, if you paid $20 for the bag of rice and it lasts you 6 months, right? That's not very much per month, right?
I think there are ways to shop and places to shop to get inexpensive, cheaper brown rice. Yeah.
Okay.
And when I say rice, I wanted to also mention grain alternatives like quinoa, wheat berries, things like that. It's any kind of grain, any kind of whole that you could use in the place of rice. Quinoa is a great option.
Yeah, and I think the thinking there is the same. Quinoa might be quite a bit more expensive than wheat, for example. But again, you can buy quite a lot of it.
Yeah.
And really get a a lot of value out of it. You can make so many meals out of a bag. And so I think differently there. Another area, everyone listening, is eggs. I'm not a fan of factory farming, and you can spend a little bit more. And by the way, cage free. Many of these terms that they put on the eggs at a big box supermarket are kind of they're misleading. There's not much difference between having a chicken spend its entire life in a tiny cage versus having it spend its entire life on the floor of a massive building where it has 2 square feet per chicken, and the chickens are all living in their own fecal matter, right? So sorry to get kind of gross about this, but take find where you can get local eggs if possible. Usually most health food stores will carry eggs from local farms. Quite often in some neighborhoods, even in suburban areas, there are people that have chicken coops and that have a little sign out front, fresh eggs, $5 a dozen.
Google fresh eggs near me.
I love that. And it's worth it. The quality of those eggs for you is so much better. And the treatment of those animals is so much more humane. And so it's better for your health. It's also better for the environment generally and the planet, and for getting away from factory farming that is inhumane in the treatment of animals. Yeah, the same is true for meat. We buy our meat from local farmers. I have half of a pig coming here in a couple of weeks. That doesn't even fully fill the freezer of our outside freezer we have a fridge out in our garage, right? So, just regular fridge size freezer. Yeah. Half a pig doesn't even fill that. Now you might think, well, they still slaughtered the pig. That's true. But there's a book called The Marvelous Pigness of Pigs. Have you ever heard of this, Claudia?
No, I haven't.
I recommend it. It's a wonderful book by a farmer in Virginia about factory farming and local farming. And it's a wonderful book. Touches on nutrition, touches on farming itself. It touches on everything from vegetables to animal raising, etc. And anyways, interesting resource. So there's just a little bit of an aside about, I guess the underlying premise is, when you really take this to the next level, when you start to understand the food chain and where our food comes from, and we start to be more supportive of where our food comes from and what we want to take into our body and what we want to spend our money on, what kind of habits or practices we're supporting, I feel like we're not only improving the health of our family, we can be improving generally our communities and taking away money from maybe large industrial complexes that are not necessarily interested in our best health so much. So getting local food, whether vegetables, eggs, meat, is a wonderful practice if you could figure out. And again, we're not talking about, we're talking about degrees here. Maybe you can't get every egg every time from a farm or every piece of meat. And maybe you're still going to go out for fast food now and then. But it's just degrees. Could we just move the needle, buy a little bit more of our food from a local co-op, a little bit more of our food from a local farm? Yeah, exactly. Okay, how many meals are we through here? What are we on?
We're only through 5 of mine. My 6th is, yes, you can have a sandwich, but it should be, the stack should be mostly veggies, veggies. Whole grain bread. One thing that you may not have thought of is, yes, you can make a sandwich, make it ahead of time. It's pretty easy to make, load it with veggies. Also, if you want like a grilled cheese, on that grilled cheese, put your roasted veggies that are left over, and make a grilled sandwich for something different. But it's really mostly veggies with a little bit of cheese as the protein, and then a whole grain sandwich. So that's my 6th. My 7th is like a loaded taco or a loaded gyro. So it's using the wrap idea and changing it into something different. Maybe a taco, maybe a burrito, maybe a gyro. But again, you're loading it with veggies and using, the wrap or a pita or something like that. These are just ideas. that can be veganized, I'll say. They can be veganized, plant-based, but also really loads the vegetables. That's it.
Okay. Excellent. A question that came up along the way that I just noticed is, how about for families? So we have a mom here with 4 children, 4 kids, and would love to know how to incorporate some of these things with them and into family meal planning. That's a little harder, right? When you've got multiple mouths to feed, it's not just your tastes and shopping for you, right? So any advice for mothers with children and incorporating these ideas?
Yes, I have met with and helped lots and lots of families over the years. I have 3 children myself, even though they're now all grown. All of these ideas can be expanded to make a family meal. For a family meal, you want to offer a protein, you want to offer a carbohydrate, and you want to offer vegetables and the fat, within the sauce or on the side. Yes, everyone has different tastes, but you don't want to be a short order cook as a mom. So your job is to offer healthy food, the carb, and the protein. If you have a child that just will not eat that, have a healthy go-to that they can have and help themselves with, mostly if they don't want what's being served. Many families say, okay, if you don't like this, you can have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, on unhealthy bread, or maybe they have a high protein cereal with milk. Have a fallback of, okay, if you don't want what's served for dinner, and again, they're just expanded to make larger portions to serve everyone, then have a fallback for that person, that they can have that instead. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, that's great. And I guess one thing I would add too is along the lines of what I was saying earlier about being more connected to our food chain. A similar concept is getting our children more connected to the making of our food. And so one of the things that sometimes happens is that mom and dad prep the food, put it on the table, and then the kids can either just start eating or start complaining about it or saying, oh, this is yucky and gross, whatever. But one of the things, kids love to cook. I have found that most children, if you say, hey, will you come help me with this in the kitchen? I was teaching my 3-year-old grandson how to crack an egg into a blender to make egg bites over Christmas time. And it was so fun. And his mom was making a video and he loved that. And yes, he got egg all over the counter, but it was okay. It was fun to see him learning and getting the sense of what the eggshell is like and how thick it is and how hard you have to bang it and then break it in. And I have found that to be the case quite often, that if you involve children in the making of the food.
Yep.
Yeah.
Then they're really proud of it. They're invested. They've got skin in the game, and studies show this. Research shows this. The more you involve them, the more likely they are to eat those healthy foods and the fiber and the vegetables.
Wonderful. Terry says, what is your thought about preparing all fresh veggies, etc., and then freezing for quick reach item? I'm referring to my smoothie ingredients. What foods should not be frozen? Okay, so I think she's basically saying she wants to be ready to make a green smoothie and freeze stuff for the most part. Is there anything she shouldn't freeze in terms of green smoothie items?
I think if you're going to put it in a smoothie, then it doesn't matter what's frozen. I mean, you could freeze ridiculous things like a cucumber or zucchini or things like that because it's going to be in a smoothie. But squashes, fresh vegetables, some of those that you take from, even cauliflower, broccoli that you take from fresh and then try to freeze, it just doesn't work. And so if you're going to eat them, they're going to taste mushy. But if you're going to put it in a smoothie, then it doesn't really matter.
One of my favorite things in a smoothie is a banana. And make sure to take it out of the peel before you freeze it. You'll only ever do that one time if you make that mistake. But that's one that I love, is to take bananas out of the peel once they're ripen. Ripe means different things to different people. To
Yes,
me,
it
it's
does.
not ripe until there's brown spots on the outside
Yes.
of the peel. To other people, that's too much. I get that. Whatever your taste is, once it's ripe, take it out of the peel, put it in a Ziploc. I usually take a straw and suck the air out of it and then just cinch it closed, just so it's not full of air in there. And Terry, I think you might have got on late. I don't know when you got on, but we mentioned spinach. So just in case you weren't here, we talked about the spinach. Freeze the spinach. It's a wonderful item. And by the way, spinach breaks down in a green smoothie. You can do a huge handful. I reach in that bag, and my handful of spinach in a green smoothie is really substantial. And I drop that in and mix it in with everything else. So, and here's a great follow-up question. Do you lose nutritional value by freezing the food?
So there's been a lot of research about this and a lot of conversation about what is the optimal way to have a veggie. Is it cooked? Is it fresh? Is it canned? And I'm going to repeat myself. Don't choke down anything that you don't want. The best vegetable to have is the way you like it, period.
Yeah.
So if you like it cooked, if you like it roasted, if you like it steamed, I am far less worried about the nutritional value that is lost by doing that versus having it fresh. So.
I'm with you 100%. Canned food is the same way. You know, it used to be that 50 years ago, that the way that they prepped vegetables and put them in a can, and the can material itself was not that great. But the fact is, many of us have grown up with that. And so what happens is, generationally, many of us have been raised that food in a can is not that good. Well, times have changed, and the nutritional value of food in a can is quite high. One of my favorite meals is what we call Hobo Beans, which is a recipe I was introduced to by my son-in-law, and I loved it. It's a meal that I can pre-prepare. You talked about legumes and how healthy they are, and beans, and I'm telling you, I'll take my Instant Pot and I will dump in kidney beans and brown Bush's beans and put in some meat, and I saute the meat first, and then I'll add this recipe to our show notes, by the way, for Hobo Beans. And I'm telling you, and a lot of onion, and then and most of this comes from a can, right? So I have like multiple cans beside my Instant Pot. I open them all up, I dump them all in after I've sauteed the meat and the onion, and man, it is so delicious and it's nutritious. So whether frozen, canned, I'm with you, Claudia. Don't worry about it that much. If it's gone from 100% to 90%, it's still a whole lot better than what most people are having for lunch or breakfast today.
It's the vegetable that you're going to eat. So I eat a lot of legumes. I'm a selective vegetarian vegan. So I try to do mostly plant-based, but I use canned beans all the time because I simply won't do it if I have to make it from scratch. If I have to do all that from dry beans, I won't do it. But the value, the nutritional value that I get from canned beans is much better than not having them at all. So that's how I feel about that.
Okay, well, this has been excellent. There's one more question that I am going to ask you, Claudia, and then we'll end with that. So, and if any of you have questions, we got to wrap up. So I appreciate all the feedback, by the way. We've had some great questions. I think they've really furthered the conversation. But we're going to take, and after this last question, after we end, what we're going to do is this recording will be available on YouTube's right away, recorded, and you can watch it if you missed the beginning. In addition, we're going to create content on our end, on our website, where we're going to take all of Claudia's recipes and we're going to write them down. We'll have a link to her book, which I highly recommend. And so we're going to give you as much information from this as we can textually so that it's easy to copy and paste, for example, with some of these recipes. But this last question is a really good one, and one that I hear all the time, and one that I think about myself. And I'm going to put it to you, Claudia. I've heard that for moms and energy management, it is best to not eat carbs at dinner, but to eat them all before dinner time. Do you have any thoughts or insights on that?
I do. I think you need to do whatever feels best for you. So if you have experimented with this and it works for you and you feel like you have better energy, I mean, I would try it. The proof is in the pudding, so to speak. So if you cut out your carbs at dinner time and you find that that helps you feel better, then try it. My big take is that I feel like in general, most everyone in our society today needs to decrease, not eliminate, decrease the amount of carbs that we're having. We're in an obesity epidemic. We're in a type 2 diabetes epidemic. And it's because carbs are delicious, plentiful, and very easy to overeat. So my take is to do, only the fist-sized portion of protein and only the fist-sized portion of carb. So you're already decreasing the amount of carb that you have. And if you're doing that during the day and not having too many carbs, then I don't see a problem having the carb at night. What I can see happening for some of my emotional eaters or stress eaters is they might be eliminating the carb at dinner time, but trying to get, because they're deprived at dinner time of the carb, they eat more carbs than they normally would during the day. Because, it's during the day, I can have the carbs. And so they end up eating more, even though they're skipping out on dinner. So that's a lot to think about. I know it's kind of a loaded answer. But in general, I think about, a balance and keeping the carbs down every single time you eat.
That's a great answer. I would add one thing. I love what Claudia said. In precision nutrition, we call it, how's that working for you? Right?
Yeah.
So this personal testing, she said, how's that working for you? I want to add one thing. Carbs are instrumental in our hormone management. And so they're more than just energy. And a lot of people misunderstand carbs and the importance of complex carbs in their diet. So when you do what Claudia said, do it all the way till you have the meal the next morning. You can't tell just how you feel after dinner about those carbs, because after dinner, melatonin is starting to rise. Your cortisol is starting to drop, hopefully, unless you're revving it up with negative news or social media or stuff that's getting you in your fight and flight mode, right? But ideally, your melatonin's going up, your cortisol's going down, and during the night, estrogen's rising, testosterone's rising, HGH is rising, and you wake up in the morning, ideally feeling at your best after a good night's sleep. That can be affected by carbs and not having carbs with your last meal or not. And so I would do that personal analysis over 24-hour periods, not just how do I feel after I eat. Yeah,
a couple days, like 2 or 3 days. Dave, you had some lunch and dinner ideas. Do you want to go through those?
I don't. I think you've given us so many, and we're almost been a whole hour. And so, but I do. The answer is yes and no. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to post mine on the content. So rather than talk about them here, I'm just going to add them. Yeah. So my recipes, I'll add to Claudia's, and we'll publish them. And those of you look for that link, and I will add more recipes to what Claudia gave you so that we have a great variety. But I won't go over them now just for the sake of time.
Okay. One thing I'll add is Dave initially asked me for recipes, and I said, I don't really have recipes. I don't know a catchy title for it, but I'm a modern day hunter gatherer, and I'm more like pick a bottled sauce, pick a protein, pick a carb, pick a fat, put it together. I'm more that. So it's like 3 ingredients or less, 4 ingredients or less. And that is the point of doing this, is making it quick and easy, accessible, and your go-to. So I don't know what to call that other than a recipe.
Well, and it's exactly what I had in mind when I said recipe. I shouldn't have even used the word recipe, because really we are thinking here in terms of carbs, fats, protein, veggies, and fruit, the basic building blocks of food. And that's what we're going to give you. If you want to add, spices, that again is where we get into trouble, because you might spice things very, very differently than we do. Now, my Hobo Beans recipe, for example, I'll give you all the spices that I do. And guess what? It's not the spices I started with. The original recipe, for one thing, they added sugar. Well, that was the first thing I didn't do, right? And so Claudia, that's a great distinction because I'm not so much into recipes
Yeah.
in terms of getting down to.
Somebody says recipe and I'm like, in fact, I've put this on my social media before. I look at a recipe and I'm like, no.
Yeah.
The general idea, I'll put those 3 things in.
I'm with you. I'm so glad you mentioned that because in my head now, that's how I think of a recipe. And for those of you listening, listen, if you want to spice it up or spice it down, that's up to you. We're really interested in giving you those building blocks of health here. And now be careful with what you do to flavor it. Don't like slather a bunch of mayonnaise. You know, if you add 3 tablespoons of mayonnaise to the wrap that Claudia mentioned, you're doing yourself a disservice. So those little things, the devil is in the details. How much flavoring you add can affect the food. But for the most part, we're just talking about spices, which we will leave up to you to spice this food how you like it.
Use the sauce that you want.
Well, Claudia, how do people learn more about you? Give us your social media, website, whatever.
Oh, thanks. All my social media handles are at 1-2-punch book, and spelled out. And
show it to us one more time.
Okay.
Show us the book.
The website is 12punchbook.com. And you can also get it Kindle, Audible. You can look inside on Amazon. You can read reviews. So it's available on Amazon in all those versions, or my website. You can get an ebook. You can get a handout series that would help you with meal planning, all the things.
And her book is awesome. I love it. And for those of you that want many more recipes, that's a great place to go. I am with Dairobi.com. Okay, is where you find our stuff, and that's where we'll be publishing the recipes that we discussed.
We got to think of another term for that. I'll be thinking.
The meal ideas.
Yeah, for the text content, I'll be thinking. I mean, it's got to be catchier than meal ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll come up with something great. Let me know when you do. Okay, and I will stop calling them recipes because that can mean a variety of different things. But we're looking for the basic ideas here to get you started and put something together, and the fine detail that really is up to you how you flavor and spice things. But these ideas, Claudia, thank you so much for providing them. There's been some great ideas here. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Okay, and for those of you listening, this is Dave Sherwin wishing you health and success.